Now the next thing I want to look at is just a few models of success in this ummah. And the first model that I want to use is Suhaib al-Rumi. And there are many Sahaba, I can choose from any of them because they're all models of success. Suhaib al-Rumi, the reason I choose to take him is, first of all, he was a slave who was stolen in his youth by Byzantines. He was raised amongst the Byzantines and finally escaped from them and ended up in Mecca poor and bereft. But the man was a man of success. He became a wealthy merchant in Mecca very quickly. When the Sahaba were making hijrah, Suhaib al-Rumi made hijrah alone. He thought he was going to make hijrah with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet made hijrah with Abu Bakr. He made his hijrah alone. The Quraysh followed him out. And he finally sat his arrows and he saw the Quraysh in front of him and he said, Ya Quraysh, innakum ta'lamuna inni armakum. You know that I'm one of the best archers amongst you. And wallahi, if you come near to me, I'll throw every arrow at you and take many of you. And I'll kill many of you. But if you let me go, then I'll tell you where I hid my wealth in Mecca. And you can go and take it. And they agreed with that. And they were people, even though they were mushrikeen, they were people of wafa, not of ghadab. And so they gave him his aman. And then they went back and they took his wealth. When he got to Medina, the first thing the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Rabihat tijaratuka ya Aba Yahya. Your tijara with Allah that was successful. Your tijara with Allah was successful. Rabihat tijaratuka ya Aba Yahya. You traded dunya for akhirah, and that is what gave you your success. Rabihat tijaratuka ya Aba Yahya. Rabihat tijaratuka ya Aba Yahya. Who told him? Man anba'aka? Who told you what the Suhaib al-Rumi did in the middle of the desert? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the gift of Suhaib al-Rumi to this ummah. Min an-nas. From those who sell themselves, seeking only the desire of Allah, seeking only the contentment of Allah. The next successful model I want to use is a black woman who we don't even know her name, who used to sweep the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And when she died, this woman who these Sahaba prayed over and didn't, the Prophet ﷺ was not informed. When he saw that she wasn't in the masjid anymore, he said, where's that old black woman? And they said, she died, Ya Rasulullah. They said, why didn't you tell me so I could pray over her? This is a woman whose name is not even mentioned in the books. We just know she was a black woman who used to sweep the masjid. And she was successful because the Prophet noticed her and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala noticed her. And another one is Zuhair, who was a simple Bedouin who used to come to Medina. And he used to sell things in the souk. And one day Jibreel came and said, should I show you someone who Allah loves and you should love? And he said yes, and he took him out and he showed him this poor Bedouin Zuhair. And he said, Ya Zuhair. He came up from behind him and he covered his eyes. And Zuhair smelt the scent of the Prophet on his palms. And he said, Man yashtari hadha al-abd? The Prophet said, who will buy this slave? And Zuhair said, Idan tarani kasidan ya Rasulullah. Then you see me that I'm somebody that's not moving in the market. I'm not worth anything. And the Prophet said, Anta lasta bikasid 'inda Allah. You're not worthless in the eyes of Allah. And he used to say to this man, Anta badiyatuna wa nahnu hadirukum. You are our desert and we are your city. And so this is another man who was successful in this life and in the next life. A simple merchant that sold simple things from the desert on the streets of Medina. And then the next person I want to look at is somebody who was a black African man whose name is Sa'id ibn Jubair, radiyallahu anhu. One of the greatest of the tabi'een. This was a man who grew up with a love of knowledge that attached him to the greatest of the Sahaba. He was a student of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He was a student of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. He was a student of Abu Huraira. And finally he became one of the greatest students of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu. This man who was a teacher of men and a maker of rijal. And he became one of the greatest of the tabi'een and one of the most learned people of this ummah. When he died, it was said about him, with him, knowledge has gone into the earth that every single living creature in this world is in need of. With this man's death, knowledge has gone into the earth that will not be returned. This man who, during the time, the great fitna of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, when he killed Abdullah ibn Zubair at the Kaaba, who was the Khalifa of that time, when he killed that man, and then each person he would take in front of them and he say, did you make kufr by your breaking the bay'ah, by your breaking allegiance with Bani Umayyah? And the people, if they said no, he would have them killed, and if they said yes, then he would let them go. And many people said no. And this man, Sa'id ibn Jubair, who heard about this fitna, he knew one day he would meet Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. And so he went to a small village near Mecca, and for 10 years he taught people. For 10 years people of Mecca would go and learn from this man. And Hajjaj, when his governor found about the power and the authority that this man had amongst the people, he sent his armies to get this man. And his armies came, and when they took him from his house, his daughter began to weep, and she said, his daughter began to weep, and she said, and he said, liqa'una fil jannah, our meeting is in Jannah. So he knew where he was going. وَأَعْظَمُ جِهَادٍ كَلِمَةَ الْحَقَّ مَعَ سُلْطَانٍ جَائِرٍ. And the greatest jihad is to speak the truth in front of an unjust tyrant and then be killed for it. And this is the ahad which Sa'id ibn Jubair had. And so he was brought before in front of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, and he said, Man anta? And he said, Sa'id ibn Jubair. And he said, Bal anta Shaqi ibn Iksir. You're the Shaqi, because Sa'id is felicitous. He said, you're the wretched, the son of the broken. Jubair is the one that fixes. And he said, my mother knew what my name meant more than you did. And then he asked him a series of questions, and in the end he told him, how do you want to be killed? And he said, you have no power to do anything to me, just do what you want. And he told him, I will be the last person that you kill. When he left, Sa'id ibn Jubair began to laugh, and he had him brought in, and he said, what are you laughing about? He said, I'm laughing at your arrogance before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How stupid you are, what a fool you are to think that you are some kind of tyrant in the earth that can do what he wants and you won't. And he said, Wallahi, I'm the last person that you are going to kill. And Hajjaj ibn Yusuf said to him, I've killed better than you. And he said, exactly, those people forgave you, I'm not going to forgive you. And I'm making dua against you, and Allah will take you. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, after he was killed, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf lived 15 days. Every night he would see in his dreams Sa'id ibn Jubair pulling at his feet or grabbing his neck, and he would shout out, Mali was Sa'id ibn Jubair, Mali was Sa'id ibn Jubair. This is the power of the wali of Allah. You see, this is the power of a wali of Allah. This is the power of successful people. And then the next person I want to look at is Sahnun, the great Qadi of Tunis, of Al-Qayrawan. And this is a man who lived his life in poverty and humility and became one of the greatest scholars of this ummah. The Ibrahim ibn al-Aghlab, who was one of the greatest rulers that this ummah has seen, who was a scholar and a hafiz of Quran, who began the Dawla al-Aghaliba in Tunis. When they wanted to appoint Sahnun as the Qadi, he refused. For 1 year this man argued with him. Finally the Sultan worked out a strategy. He brought him before him and he said, what do you say about a man who's the best of the Muslims, and the ruler wants to appoint him as Qadi? What do you say about this man? He said he should be forced. What if he refuses? And he said, then you should still force him until he accepts it. He said, what if even forcing doesn't work? Then he should be whipped until he accepts it. And he said, Araka hadha rajul, you are this man. What do you want me to do? And this Sa'id ibn Jubair argued with him till finally he accepted the qada with 3 conditions. The first condition, that he would begin with the family of the ruler and the ministers and all of the people working for the government. That's who he would implement his qada first. And the second thing, that he would not be given any money for his work. And the third thing, that the implementation would take place immediately, and he would either perform it with his own hand or witness it. And he accepted these conditions. Now this man, when Sahnun, when he became the Qadi of Al-Qayrawan, the people rejoiced because he brought justice to that city. One of the women who was accused of having a house where women were servicing men, what he did was he had the house destroyed, and then he took that woman and he put her in a neighborhood surrounded by Salihin. He put her in a neighborhood surrounded by Salihin so that she could be rectified. This was Sahnun, who was a model of success, a man who died in poverty. You see, so we don't measure our success by dunya. And the last thing that I want to say is, I want to talk about 10 qualities that have been identified as by these kuffar. وَالْحِكْمَةُ ضَالَّةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ. The wisdom is the lost beast of the mu'min. And I want to say there are many women that I could use it as examples, and I think it's important to mention one of our most successful women, and that is Aisha radiallahu anha, one of the greatest intellectuals and scholars of this ummah, who was in the house of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not wasting her time in frivolity, but learning and absorbing the knowledge of this deen, to the point where all of the Sahaba recognized Aisha and went to her for guidance and for fatwa. And Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, who is the model of a woman who, again, much is unknown of her life, but we know who she produced. Hassan wa Hussein, Shababa Ahl al-Jannah, the two youth of the people of Jannah, and look at their lives, Hassan and Hussein. And this is a woman who her children are a testimony of who she is. And I will say every single man that I mentioned, behind him is their mother. Every single man of success in this dunya and in akhirah, behind that man is the mother or the murabbiya who raised that man. And the women should recognize that we have countless women in the history of Islam whose names are unknown to us. But the works that they produced are in the children that they produced, the men and the women that they produced. And Malik ibn Anas, there is no Malik ibn Anas without Malik. There is no Malik ibn Anas without the mother of Malik, who when he went to study first, he said she used to tie the turban on my head. His mother used to tie the turban on his head. And she would say to him, خُذْ مِنْ حِلْمِ ابْنِ هُرْمُزْ قَبْلَ أَنْ تَأْخُذَ مِنْ عِلْمِهِ. Take from his forbearance before you take from his knowledge, because the woman knows the importance of forbearance. And the murdiya, the murabbiya of the Prophet is Halima, is the woman of Hilm. You see, these are the successful people.